You are listening to Red Team Radio.
This is part 2 of the Mr. Anderson episode on Red Team Radio. If you have not listened to part 1 yet, click on the link on the left or right of the screen. Now to the show.
Right.
Well, you're an expert at it now. So you know there are atmospherics. You have to be conditioned to the atmospherics. So in the old days, we would call it first entry or first break.
Mm-hmm.
And when you crack a door, you stand there for a minute or two, sometimes 5 minutes. You want to let the air come in, the air go out. You want to smell things. You want to listen. What clicked? What did you hear? Is there something hissing? Is there a ding? What is it?
Mm-hmm.
Once that's happening, the door's open, the sheet goes down, the door closes, and you stand there, and you're ready, as if you're standing in front of somebody for a fist fight. You should be expecting anything and everything at that point, and you're doing atmospheric.
And for the people that are like in the private sector who are listening, what he talked about that sheet going down is it's a staging area essentially, and you put a sheet down so that you are keeping it clean. You're not introducing other dirt, or if you are, the dirt on your shoes and stuff like that gets put on that sheet. And then sometimes, I mean, you're going in full bunny suit mode.
You never see
like
that until the day up, right? So
right.
Typically we just have our camera or our picks or our bypass tool,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the one thing we need to check something. I just want to check a side door today. So like on my walk by the day before, I noticed there's an entry point behind a gate that might have a padlock on it. All I want to do is get to the padlock. What kind of padlock is it? So I take a side shot, a picture shot, go back to the lab, blow up that, find out, is it a quick set, a mast, or what is it that's on the gate? I get through the gate, figure out what that is, and then what's in the backyard. Is there a camera? Do we need a special tool, a special hat? It's got a special light, something that keeps us from being noticed. What's my neighborhood like? Am I going to show up in a van with a ladder and a set of overalls on and a paint can that's empty that has some tools in it, set up in front of the garage door, and I'm going to slip a tool above the top. I'm going to pull the emergency brake on it. It's emergency access inside the garage door, and then go back and have lunch in my truck. I'm not even going to open the door at that point. I might not open that door for an hour, but I know it's unlocked. I know I can get in the garage door if I want to because I'm the painter.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I know I don't even look like I'm painting. I'm painting nothing on the brush. Or I've gone through the gate and I go around and I bring that one tool. So if you're ever stopped, you're ever questioned, it's easy to toss a tool.
Right. Yeah, making yourself clean, which is another thing that you don't have to worry about.
So you don't carry your bunny suit on your back like we talked about. So anyway, back to our exploit of this hide that we're in now. So I'm in, and once the 5 minutes are up or so, and I think it's a good time to go, I'm gonna start working out my inventory. What do I need to do? What first thing I want to do is exploit. If I'm by myself, I need to get the biometrics on the front door. I need to get the doorknob off, another one on that looks like it because I've already taken a picture of the door. I'm going to put a simple one in that's got one pin in it. So in case somebody comes home, they can still get in their door because I don't know what the
you do like any key lock, as we call it, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Any key will open it. And I break the lock down. Hopefully in 8-9 minutes, I'm going to be done with that. I've taken micrometers of the pins. I give them an order, took a photo, put it all back together, get it back in there, and make sure I'm using gloves. I'm not even going to try to pick it at this point unless I've picked it to get in. And make sure I haven't left any forensics, or I'm going to bump it, whatever I'm going to do to get in the door, take it apart, get it done. And then we start a systematic circuit around the house. Either take the left and stay left, or take the right and stay right. But we also have a term that we use. You were talking about it before. Remember what it was?
I don't. What?
Break in and right.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah, we're talking about it's. This is not something you do in the private world. This is definitely public sector stuff. This is a term that I remember was taught to me, which was a break and shake.
Yeah.
And
that's right.
Yeah, it's the idea of you're making entry. You want to talk about the idea of break and shakes? I'll give the 5-second intro to what that is, or
yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I didn't know if you were comfortable with it.
Well, I want to see how far you go.
Okay.
Because this is your show, and
So a break and shake. It's a technique used when you need to turn someone to become an asset for an operation, right? So what you do is you figure out you do on your surveillance, you know when they leave their house, you know when their spouse leaves their house. This works really well when they have spouses and kids, which is unfortunate, but as jacked up as it sounds, that's the reality of the
But nobody gets
situation.
hurt.
No one gets hurt. That's the thing. That no one gets hurt physically, right? There's mental anguish, but we'll get to that part here in a second. So you learn the day, you learn their schedule, and then you know when the wife and kids comes home beforehand, right? And
Because you want that hysterical phone call.
yep, that's what you want. What you want is you go in there, you mess everything up, you make it look like a burglary, but you don't take anything, and that's a point. You want to make sure that they know nothing was taken, and then the spouse comes home, right, with a child, and they are panicked, and they don't feel safe in their house anymore.
Super vulnerable.
And yeah, they are scared of everything, and then they call the person that you are trying to turn, and that person goes, and now they're in a position where they feel like they can't provide protection for their family. They can't protect their own family, and that is, as we talk about, like we were talking about earlier in HUMINT, right? You have the hierarchy of needs.
That's right.
And safety is that really low on that hierarchy.
Almost a foundation.
Yeah, and if you can't provide that for your family, right? You now start feeling vulnerable yourself and useless, and if you can then flip that to where you then meet someone who's just like, hey, we can help you, and then they're just like, oh, okay. Okay, yeah, I can be helped. I have a way out now.
Right.
I don't know who's trying to target me, but I have someone that can give me a way out. Now they become a resource for you, right? Now
It's the intelligence version of 3 cups of tea.
Mm-hmm.
And an operator told me this. We go into a village and, hey, how you doing? Have a cup of tea.
Mm-hmm.
What do you need? How's everybody?
That's right.
Come back the second time. We see your generator's broken. It's good to see you. Here's some new parts. Let's build this for you.
Let's help
need
you.
Your water.
Yep.
Third cup of tea. Where in the F is the taliban?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is where you do your ask, right? This
You
is
do your
where it's
ask.
like, hey,
That's
we've
right.
helped you. Can you just give us small bit of information?
That's right.
We'll come back to help. We just need this to continue. Yeah,
And you walk your asset along.
yeah. Well, and that's the thing is you can't just like shove them into it, right? There's a whole process. There's a
It's a shock. They'll shock themselves out of it.
Mm-hmm.
They'll just turn and run. You're left with nothing essentially.
And it was so interesting to learn this from from you all and the other professionals who do this on a daily basis, right? Now in the commercial world, when we operate, we can't
still
use those
do it.
techniques,
Social engineering. You
but we
deliver
do use social
flowers,
engineering.
right? Packages.
Yeah, we can. What I've really liked to do is I like exploiting internal company mail, right? Put a flash drive in there. Hey, can you look at this? And it's intercompany mail, right? Like only employees can use that.
You trust everything.
And they plug it in. Like I have never had that fail, right? But it's
Wow.
it's the same idea. It's a different approach because it's much less aggressive, right? Generally we don't want to cause mental anguish against the employees that we're targeting in the commercial world. But the ends are the same. We need someone to do something for us, right?
So we've given birthday presents, but the card was ripped. So the card's missing just the outside envelope. So they don't know who it's from.
So they know who it's from.
So
Yeah.
they'll walk the camera in or the recorder in, and it's in their house now.
Yeah.
And they'll keep it for at least a day, 2 days, 3 days, or they just can't figure it out. And sometimes they keep it forever.
That's super interesting.
Battery runs out. We don't care. Right?
Yeah.
The clock's still sitting there.
Yeah. No, I love that. It's like the stuff like that, right? From the people that are doing it on the reg is just mind blowing. The things that you learn.
Right.
But it's the same premise. Like we're using the same idea of social engineering, of manipulation, of coercion, right? We may not be using mice in the world of commercial pen testing or red teaming,
right.
But when we're social engineering, right, we do put we abuse other psychological factors, the want to be helpful, right? That we put some false limitation on urgency, right? Like, oh, this has to be done today, or like, this other big thing that is relying on it that you don't know about is not going to get processed. And then it's going to be your fault if you don't do this for me
Right.
right now.
You know what I've never asked you? Do you have any follow-on work that you do on any given pen test? For instance, do you prolong the pen test so that you can leave behind devices or
Yeah.
equipment so that you can gather, since you're not able to get what you need the first time?
Right. I would say most are full spectrum red teaming engagements. We're doing leave behinds 9 times out of 10.
Okay.
And even if it's not full spectrum, sometimes our job is just get in, leave a Dropbox, and get out, and that's it.
Okay.
And I would say that's extremely popular and common. Now, how long that Dropbox gets left in there for is dependent on how long the project is.
Is your retrieval overt or covert?
In that particular instance, it's always, well, I can't say always because we've had clients that ask us to take it out without others noticing. It's more times than not overt. The project is over. We're there with the team. We're working with them.
Okay.
And it's like, okay, hey, look.
Show's over, guys.
Yep.
Collect your stuff.
That's right. It's like, this is where we placed it, right? And then they see it physically, even though they saw a photo of it in our report. They still want to see it, like, oh yeah, okay, oh yeah, it's behind the printer,
Wow.
or oh, it's underneath this floorboard that is removable that has networking equipment in it, or something like that. And so it's mostly overt. Even when we're like putting devices behind the readers or behind a biometric reader, like an ESP key or something like that, our retrieval for that is overt. Sometimes we'll mend the wires for the client as well.
Right.
If they're not going to have their own staff do that. And so it's all overt, which is the other, like, that's the duality from the public sector to the private sector. When you have a leave behind, which is what we call a Dropbox in the private sector world, but something that is a leave behind on there, you have to retrieve that.
Yeah.
And so it's not like you make entry once, you drop it, and then you're good to go. You make entry once, you drop it, it can't be discovered. Or if it is discovered, it has to be non-attributable.
That's right.
To any team that was
That
working.
is so key. Non-attributable is probably the second most important thing. Not leaving anything behind accidentally.
Right, without someone, missing a piece of a kit, right? And then
where COTS come in.
Yep. Well, and that was our specialty, is non-attributable. Like,
we want to tell them what COTS is.
Well, COTS is a term that we use on the in the private sector world too. It's commercial off the shelf.
Mm-hmm.
So that's using a Raspberry Pi, right? That's using an Intel NUC.
Yep.
Anyone can get those, right? You just need to make sure that if it is going to be found, that you bought that device from the right country.
Right.
So if you
baby monitor.
Yeah, I had some other ideas pop in my head, but I'm not going to say them, of devices that have been used before.
Sure.
But you want to, if the device does get found, you want to make sure that serial number that purchasing path that went to that device was from a country that is not your own,
right.
or a country that maybe that other country is at war with, so they believe it's them,
That's
right?
right.
And it's another thing that you taught me is, which I always thought was interesting. And in the private sector world, we never have to use it, and I've never had to use it for anything else. But it's an idea that was interesting, which was along the same lines of making sure your product is from a country that is not the one that you're from. Is sometimes you don't need to make entry, and sometimes all you need to do is stick a rake into that lock to cause disturbance,
yes.
and then
just the forensics is enough.
Or what you do is you break off a piece of metal inside there that was a pick or a rake, right, on purpose, and that metal is sourced from from all the elements that they can, or from all the magic they can do with determining where something is from. That metal was sourced from another country that we're trying to make it look like this country is trying to go to war with this other country.
That produced some continuity between guys that traveled a lot. So whenever I traveled, I did my best to collect, like in Hong Kong, I'd go find blocks, lock picks, things like that, bring them back, put them in a vault, you mark it, Hong Kong or China because it's China,
Right.
right? Taiwan, maybe they use something slightly different, but typically it's the same.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in Moscow, St. Petersburg, China, wherever I was, I'd always bring things back that whether it's pocket litter
Yeah.
or whether it's, and you can explain
And
pocket litter.
I'll explain pocket litter, yeah, because that's
Okay.
not a typical thing in the private sector world.
Sure. And so anything that we could do, you said, where am I going to get a Chinese pig? You
Right.
got to get it
You
from
gotta
China.
get it
So
in
either an
China.
operator's come back or a friend that's been there. Hey, whenever you guys travel, let us know. We might need something from where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want you to put it in your suitcase. I want you to buy it, put it in a bag, put a label on it, ship it back to this address. We'll
Yep.
go pick it up. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want it to come to me. I don't want you traveling with it on an airplane.
Right.
But you want that buffer.
Yeah. So pocket litter is the concept of when you wear your pants for a day or two, right? You have stuff that comes in your pants. You got the fuzz that's in there, the surrounding dirt. If you like, you drop your keys, you pick them up, you put them back in your pocket. You have that dirt from that area now in your pocket. And what you do is you take all this, and it's a culmination of items, and then you store it in these little containers, and you mark it from where it was, and you make sure that your pants that you're wearing was from that local area, right? You don't want to be wearing jeans from Old Navy sent to the U.S. to then over there, right?
They go in the same bag.
Yep. It's the same clothes that you're wearing over there that looks like it came from
Indigenous,
there.
yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
And it is a culmination that then you can drop. Once you make entry into a place, you can drop it on the ground, or you could put it by a lock, or you need to make it look like there was, the dirt on your shoes comes from,
Right.
it's a combination of both dirt from the place that you're at and from that place.
Eat at a place, keep the receipt.
And yeah, it presents false evidence for that team, for another team to find that you want them to find.
Right.
And
You either want them to know something you want them to know, or you want them to know something you want them to know.
yeah, you shape their belief, right?
That's right.
It's truly like Inception, right? It's an idea, and then they get fixated on it, and it becomes their own story. Like this group is attacking us, or this country, this team from this country is working there. And
It all
it's like,
plays into game theory, right?
Yeah.
So that seriously satanic skill set they teach us to, if he does this, then I'll do that.
Right.
If he does this, then I'll do that. Well, if you're going to set your place up for this security, how am I going to obfuscate it? If I can obfuscate it, what are you going to do to find out if I've done that?
and it's those are things that we never have to explore in the private sector world, right? It's nothing we ever have to think about. Even when it comes to, we don't pick locks in the field in the private sector world a lot because there's just so many other bypasses that we
Right.
can use. Picking a lock, it's the last thing that you do against
That's
a
right.
lock, right? But the idea of, even if I do have to pick a lock, that I'm leaving evidence, it's not something that we have to worry about. There's no longer the idea of, this business is going to swap out their locks every, or not swap out, but do forensic investigation every 3 to 6 months, right? Like there's, we'll talk about like the embassy protocol, right? Where different embassies will, depending on where they're at and depending on what country, they'll go and they'll look at their locks every so often.
They'll empty the pins out of their lock.
That's right. And
they'll
do
put them under a microscope.
Yep. The electron scanning microscope, they'll see what's up, and they'll have their forensic locksmith that does this every so often. And one of the key pieces of information that you want to know is, when do they do that schedule?
Right.
Because there might be an attack that you have to do against a lock that is going to leave forensic evidence, but if they're doing it once every 6 months, we want it to do it
So I
the
used
day
a
they
dead
put that
beetle.
lock in.
I used a Japanese beetle.
Mm-hmm.
Stuck it on the door. I was working an embassy.
Yep.
Stuck a Japanese beetle, just boom, stuck it on the outside. And I kept my eye on it. And I knew when that beetle was gone that they had cleaned the lock, taken it out. The next day, I entered that doorway at night, I don't know, 1 a.m. And my second door inside the embassy was a guy sleeping in a bed.
Right. Yeah.
So
A security guard, right?
Yep.
Security guard sleeping.
And my intel said there was no way he could beat it. So I wasn't able to complete what I wanted to do at that visit. So I was able to come back at a different time uh, and take care of it. And I was able to come through the front door of that embassy and did some social engineering, and then was able to access the room I needed to go in and do my work in. But you never know what you're going to meet.
Right.
Right.
Well, and that's why,
Oh, and any tool that I've ever used anywhere in country stayed and never brought it back. You don't want to take any of it back.
Right. Well, that's the idea of making yourself clean, right?
Yep.
You walk by the river and you dump your tools over there.
Everything.
Another thing that we don't have to worry about in the commercial world, right? It's something.
It's all disposable.
We don't think about, like, we talk about picks and bypass tools being consumable items that you have to replace every so often, but we don't talk about it when we're, with commercial red teams, where we are like, you have to toss your equipment in the garbage can, right? Or preferably in a river, where it's much harder to find. You have to break your tools and scatter them around. We don't have to worry about that. And when we're doing,
it's easy to catch a thief with the stuff on it.
Right. Well,
Right.
and that's the other duality point, right? When someone comes in and gets caught on a commercial red team engagement, what is the biggest consequence? You have an ego hit. Maybe the project is over.
Yeah.
Right.
Try again maybe tomorrow.
Yeah,
right?
you give them a letter, that says, "Hey, I'm supposed to be here. Thanks for finding me. Make sure to don't talk about that."
Right.
You're not pulling that letter out when you're doing work, in another country against another country that is not sanctioned, right?
No, you're either going to get backed up, or you're going to now defend yourself and try to get out of there,
Right.
not killing the guy, maybe incapacitating him,
Yep.
or something. But the object is to not get caught with anything. It's easy to make up a story because all you're doing is lying. You lie about everything.
Yep.
Right.
And it's built on partial truths, right?
Everything
that they can
is,
backstop
right?
on,
Okay.
and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's not like whole cloth lies.
Right. Yeah, and it's and that's the other thing is we can make, I can say, "Oh, I'm here for a service order that I was supposed to be working on in the private sector world." And most of the time they won't check that out. They'll be like, "Oh, okay, yeah, you're supposed to be here."
You remind me of all these wonderful stories. So I happened to be in a marina in another country that had mega yachts, and I needed to get information off of a boat that was 4 away from me.
Oh.
Well, I went there in my chef coat, and I went there at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night when I knew the crew had left to go party, and having a chef dressed as a chef on another boat, it looks like you work there, you belong there. So
Right.
I owned the place when I walked in to do what I wanted to do. But on another job, I was sent in to retrieve something from a boat that we knew was on the boat. The boat was anchored out. Right? So
okay,
no
so you
boats around it.
Yep, you got to take a little dinghy to it, or
Yeah, so I took a boat out, swam to the anchor chain, crawled the anchor chain up on the boat, 2 a.m, come around. I have to pick the back door lock to get in, rummage around, find what I needed to find. It was a whole 30-minute, and the whole time it's like, if you've ever been on the inside of a boat, I mean, yeah, you get some tide. You want a nasty night. You want the rain. You want the waves.
Right, to
you
move
want
around.
the wind. But when it's calm, man, if you're barefoot, I'm in a bathing suit, no shirt, I got my tools, just enough to get into what I want to get in, and a Ziploc bag because I don't want what I'm taking out of there wet.
take it wet. Yep.
And you literally, I mean, you got to go back to where you came in. You're hoping that your footprint's dry on deck before anybody wakes up and sees it. But to get in, get what you need to get off, it's a completely different game than just walking fully clothed to
Right.
the next yacht and walking on like you own the place.
And that's the other thing is, like, on the commercial side, we don't have to worry about those things, right? If we're always fully closed, we don't ever have to swim to some place to get there, right? It's just like, oh, okay, we need access to that. We will go just take the proper channels to get to that place, right?
Yeah, what's your story? What are you doing out here 2 o'clock in the morning in the
Right.
middle of the right?
On a boat you're not supposed to be on.
Swimming.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's never something I ever had to worry about when, we're breaking into a, Fortune 100 company. And it's just like the story I tell them is I'm here during business hours, I'm doing maintenance, or,
Right.
I'm an employee here, or I'm visiting a friend who's an employee here. I was just looking for going to the bathroom, right? And then you just make sure that you tell them that friend that you're visiting that they're actually not there that day. Something like that. The one thing I did find, which is a purely item that only affects, well, I would assume only affects the private sector world, is I've been on engagements where I was recognized by someone on the team.
Okay, so that's a wild card. How often does that happen?
Rare. It doesn't happen because usually if we know someone on the team, we try to plan our entry when they're not there. Like there was one job we were doing in Atlanta, and we were making entry at nighttime, and that's because the whole security team knew Bobak and I, right? So it's a private company, large marketing firm, and I had a good friend, and she would recognize me in a second,
right.
And she would sell me out 100%, right? If she saw me, she would totally sell me. She'd be like, "Yay!" But I've had this situation where we're on a job, and
if I see you anywhere, I know what you're doing. I mean, you know that.
Well, it's something.
But I wouldn't say hello.
It's something I tell my students is
right.
like, if you see me doing two things. One, if you see me smoking cigarettes,
yes,
right? Do not. I'm working. I don't smoke cigarettes for fun, right? Like I'm working here. Don't come up to me. Or the other thing is, if you do see me on a job, right?
Don't say hello.
Don't talk to me.
Right.
Right. Act like you would act if you didn't know who I was. Now, if I'm in a restricted area and you're also in that area, and even if you didn't know who I was, you would be like, "Hey, who are you? Let's go talk to security." Do that.
Yeah. Be normal.
But what I don't want you to do is be like, "What's up, man? Like, hey, how you doing?" Like
Don't use my real name, please.
Or I had a buddy I was at their office, and he's at the office, and he doesn't regularly work at that office. He was at an in-person meeting
right.
With another team. And he sees me. He's like, "What's up, man?" And the saving grace is like, I do network pen testing as well, and sometimes I'm supposed to be on site, right? I don't just do physical stuff. And even though I run the company and I own the company, I still like to get my hands dirty, type on the keyboard, right, break into buildings and stuff like that. But now my salespeople may not be happy about it because they just want me on the golf course closing deals.
Right.
But I'm like, I still wanna hack stuff, right?
You're a bit like me. I'm rusty.
So they go and they they're like, "Oh, what's up, man? Like, how you doing?" I'm just like, "Hey," and they're just like. I'm like, hey, I gotta go, and the person asked me the question I thought was hilarious. It's like, "Are you working?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm working." And he's like, "What do I do? Right? What's happening?" And I've had other friends who have had similar situations, and the question always, "What do I do?" is asked, right? And it's funny because I'm like, "What would you do if you didn't know who I was?" "Oh, nothing. I just walked past you." That's what you do. I will mark him if you want. I will mark in my report. You can tell your boss that you saw me or whatever, because it's usually their boss that's hiring me.
Right.
But like, this never happened. We never saw each other. I'm gonna continue going over to the snack bar to get my drink, like every other employee does here, right? And you're gonna continue walking out, going to your vehicle because you're done with your meeting, right? Now I didn't know he had a meeting there. We talked afterwards.
Right.
Because he called me afterwards and he's like, did I ruin your project? Like, did I cause? And I was like, no, you're all good, man. Like, it's all good. Like, you're a Silicon Valley company, right? Fortune 100. Who doesn't like? You're gonna run into people that who it doesn't really matter. But you don't have that luxury, right?
No, it's fun to call that person back though when they did it right and go, "Hey."
Oh, I've had that situation as well where I've gotten text messages from friends where they're just like, "Hey, I saw you here, and it looked like you were working."
I love your one-word responses. Even you're a consummate professional all the time. Even we have a close personal relationship, but I know that I can get in, get out, and get back to work with you because it's like you're short, sweet, professional.
I have some people that
appreciate that.
I have some people that get angry about that with me.
What?
Especially if I'm, the thing that I found is when I get invited to go work with another red team, so they hire us, and then they see me when I'm in like physical entry mode, right? Everything is planned out. Yeah. Everything is by the numbers, right? And I'm very like, okay, we have all this. This is what we're going to do. This is our backup plan. This is our second backup plan. We have all this planned out, and we're going to do entry. And they're just like, they're like, "Oh, okay. Well, you just planned out the entire thing." I was like, of course I planned out the entire thing, and we're going to do it by this plan because this plan is letter's going to get in, get out unnoticed, right? And that's one of the sayings for one of my companies.
Fly by the seat of your pants is what I do.
But you have to do that because you are put into situations where not everything can be planned, right? Where everything on
I plan as much as I can, though. Don't
Right,
get me
of
wrong.
course. Oh, no.
It's not just,
Yes, it's not just on the whim.
I'm going to get lucky today.
Yeah.
right?
No, I understand. There's an infinite amount of planning, not just done by you, but done by a whole team of analysts, right? Back in wherever they're at.
Yep.
And, but with mine, it's like, hey, like we have a plan. It's a single commercial building. We can get blueprints.
Sure.
Like we have friendly information that we can get from there, and we can integrate it into our project, right? But then these teams that are just like, oh, okay. It's like I become less fun, Drew, right? They're like, oh, didn't you want to take a selfie with the logo? And now I'm like, no, I don't want to take a selfie. That's not what we're doing. That's not what we do.
I couldn't wait to get a picture with you when we pulled up.
You
love it.
You did.
I have to, though, because I have to tell my wife that I was there.
Right.
I lied to her once.
You gotta go. You gotta get your alibi.
In the old days, I told my wife I was going somewhere. I went somewhere completely different, and she just happened to find out.
Yeah.
And I just promised her I'd never do that again.
Yeah. Now it's like, I was really here. Drew's here. Like, look, this is legitimate. We're not here for other things. But yeah, it's it was a good time. But those teams that hired me, they realized there is a different side to me, right? It's not just the happy-go-lucky, like I'm smiles, hey, let's hang out type of thing. It's like I'm here to get in. I'm here to get what I need, and I'm here to be unnoticed.
Well,
I'll be seen and forgotten.
We're in boxes. We work out of boxes.
Yeah.
Right. When it's go time, it's go time.
Yep.
When it's plan time, it's plan time.
Yep.
We have to have the social. It's like, how long ago did you reach out and ask me if I had the time to come out?
Months.
2 months?
3 months ago.
3 months ago.
Yeah, when we were first planning this.
So, it's like, I don't know what I'm going to say. I have no idea what we're going to talk about because I've been cooking hardcore.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm in that box. But I had to go up. I had to open up my stuff. I had to close the chef box, open the CMOE box, and get up there with the stuff, and everything washes back in. The mind palace opens up, and there it is. So
all the memories.
So, and that's generally what happens with guys that work hard at stuff like this.
Yeah, it's just I'm just goal oriented, and I would say definitely it's you and Cash and other instructors that I had, because you all did it for realsies, right? Where my life is private sector stuff, right? Where I don't have to worry about these type of things all the time, right? I can make a mistake, and it's not going to end the project. It's not going to get me captured. It's not going to hurt someone else's life. But it's still you all engraved into me, and all my instructors, not just you and Cash, but all my instructors, even the ones we're not naming, that help me get into to have my skill set to where they are and give me that push into where they're at. You all have a very particular mindset on how you approach items, and I've just borrowed that and I use it in my everyday private life now when I'm doing these work projects for these Fortune 100 companies. And yeah, I've had red teamers tell me like, oh, you're less fun. I'm like, but we're having fun because we're making entry. And they're like, yeah, I just thought you'd be more like how you are when you're not working. I'm like, no,
So I can't be that guy. When I'm working, I can't be that guy.
Yeah. And I've never had to deal with a situation where I've always had to worry about that.
Right. So I can't be that guy to a certain extent. When you are a personality type, let's say you're a stick in the mud, you got to stay a stick in the mud. When you're charismatic, you got to stay charismatic. If you are, this kind of guy, this kind of chef, as long as you can cook, and that was the point. You're going to go to school for 7 years.
Yeah.
And you're going to learn to understand what is the Le Repertoire de Cuisine from Kareem and Escoffier and all these phenomenal chefs. You're going to work with 3 or 4 Michelin stars. You're going to figure it out because we're going to put you with a billionaire here. We're going to put you with a billionaire. And there are trillionaires, by the way.
Oh, yeah. In Saudi Arabia.
And you're going to be put with these guys that have the money to eat absolutely the best, the right things. you need to know what those are and how to cook those things, or you might as well forget your needs.
Right. Well, that was the one thing is for a long time I hadn't ever had your cooking. It wasn't until like,
It's weird that you haven't. You're like one of the only ones.
well, no, I've had your cooking now, but I'm saying for like the first 6 years that we
Yeah.
knew each other, I never had your cooking at all. And it was strange because I was like, oh, I know he's a good chef, but like, right. And I hear these stories from other people, but it wasn't until like 6 years and I had your cooking and I was like, oh man, this is really good.
Thank you.
This is amazing. And we had you made dinner, and then because I stayed at your place and we were driving together to another far off place. And you had breakfast, and it was like elaborate, and it was crazy, and
It was eggs. It's no big deal.
Yeah, well, that's what you said. You're like, oh yeah, no, this was easy, and I was like, I'm literally eating at a Michelin star restaurant right now. Like,
Well, thank you. We had a lot of fun. You've asked me a lot of questions.
yeah,
You mind if I ask you a question?
I will give you the opportunity, and we talked about this beforehand. I will give you the opportunity to ask me a question. Yes.
Is it that time?
Let's do that. Yeah, and we'll after that we'll wrap this up. We've been talking. I know there's no free.
I could talk to you all day.
I know.
There's a lot to talk about.
And
There's
there
a lot
is
of
a
fun.
ton to talk about, and definitely we'll split up this episode into multiple episodes. But
Okay.
and I know we can talk all day, and I would love to invite you out again to talk some more later.
Can you do this over the phone?
We could. One of the things. So
not the same, is it?
I've done podcasts over the phone, and that was one of the things is I'm limiting our capability to in person only.
I think that's smart, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
when I think about you working, right, first of all, I'm like, man, I wish I knew a lot of the electronic and alarm exploitations. I haven't got proficient with, especially currently, last 5-6 years of technology. And obviously, it's incredibly fun to go learn those things. And I know a lot of the listeners are probably thinking the same thing I am, but when would I get a chance to use it unless I became a criminal? So, as it relates to me, have you ever been on a job that it did not go as planned? Something went awry, but you pushed through it anyway. Tell me what that looks like.
Yeah, I can definitely. So we're doing a red team, long-term red team. We're talking months long, right, on this project. And we had a whole bunch of time to gather intel, target other buildings and all this stuff. But the whole point was we were getting into a building to get government or get access to the HSMs, the hardware security modules that held legitimate government keying material. Now, we're not supposed to touch the HSMs. We were just supposed to take a photo that we were able to get into there, right?
Yeah.
And there was a bypass that I put on a sensor, and that bypass fell off because I didn't stick it correctly, and it caused an alarm. Okay, there's a camera right there.
Immediately?
Yeah, it is a force-door entry alarm.
Was it quiet or was it loud?
There's no one in the building.
Okay.
But
So
the
it
building
just sent a signal?
It
Somebody?
sent a signal. Yep. The security team is 3 buildings away, and sure enough, like I pop up on camera. I'm there with one of my buddies. We're literally taking apart a lock because I've already decoded. I made a master key
Sure.
for the facility, and they use the Primus system.
Oh, wow. Nice
yep.
key.
Yep.
Yeah.
I had their master key. I already had their side
Everest?
fitting.
Yeah.
It was this one that they were still on the Primus Classic series.
That was not a biaxle.
No. Well, none of the Primuses are. They have the finger pins on that one.
Okay.
The Medico
All right.
ones
Okay,
are
got
the
it. Yeah.
So I'm swapping out the locks because I put my any key lock in there, but now it's time to put the regular cylinder in there. And I doing this, and my magnetic bypass that I had for their door sensor it fell off because I didn't stick it hard enough, right? I just was trying to do it quickly.
Right.
It worked. And so it fell off, and the door had a door force entry alarm that went off.
Okay.
So then security came. At this time, we're already through, like we're down in the server area and everything like that. And I'm opening up racks and looking for these HSMs because I don't know where they're at. They're just like, it's in this building.
Are they
Find
labeled?
it. No.
So you have to interrogate everything.
I have to go through, yes. It's very manual process. They did this on purpose because they're like, well, a regular person wouldn't know where they were at, where they're held, right? So I'm getting into all these different secure cages in this data center, not tripping off alarms, doing it correctly, right? But that door that I was going
entry
to,
door, that daggone entry.
yeah, like 20
Mag
minutes
lock
before,
on it,
and security comes into the data center area, the data hall that I'm in.
They're armed?
And I don't remember if they're armed. I don't believe they might have been armed. I don't know. Not this one. Maybe this one wasn't armed. And they are like, "Hey, you, come here." And I was like, "Hey, I'm working. What do you need?" And it's really loud, so like that's why we're yelling, right? I was like, "Well, I'm working. What do you need?" And I'm yelling it because there's all this AC going on. And he comes over to me, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm just like, and I said, "Hey, my boss is so-and-so. We had a problem with one of these servers, and he told me I need to come and physically turn it on and off again. But I don't know where the server is, so I'm looking for it, right? Because I know they see me on camera, and he's
you have to have a story to match the video,
right?
Yeah.
And he has a tablet, and they can see all the camera feeds on the tablet as well. And he's like, "You got another guy here with you?" I was like, "Yeah, I got my coworker. Like, I just needed some help, so he's helping me look for the servers too." And he's like, "Okay, I need both of you here." So we go find my coworker, and which is Royal. I'll blank out that name if he doesn't want me to say it, but I'm sure he'll be okay with it.
It's more of a title, Royal. You know.
And so he's there. And they show us a picture of us at that door where the alarm went off. And he's like,
"What are you doing?
What are you guys doing here?" And I was just like, "Oh, yeah, well, we work with the security team, so we're kind of interested in lockpicking. So, we were just digging around. And we're in an environment where that excuse would have played well.
Okay.
Right? Except they didn't know who we were. And then he was just like, "Well, how'd you get into this building? Or how'd you get into this area that you're in right now?"
So he's thinking.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Because I bet you, well, I know what happened afterwards. They went and they viewed all the footage of us of that day.
I would have.
And, they were very thorough.
They found you doing walk-bys and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no. They didn't see us do walk-bys. What they did see us do is under the door tools. But they couldn't see what we were doing because, like, the resolution of the camera wasn't good enough. But they saw us kneel and then get up and walk through the door, right?
Yeah.
And they actually asked
us. It's a hernia, sir.
They didn't know what we were doing, and they're just like, and we only did it on one door. We only had to do it on one door.
Okay.
So when they asked us after the briefing, like after the project, because they didn't ask us there, but they asked us afterwards, I was like, "If I told you I was tying my shoe, would you believe me?" And they're just like, "Well, now that we know what you were doing, no, but that might have worked." So, but I told them I was underdooring this particular door, and I showed them how to do it and all that, and I had the security guards do it with me.
Isn't that fun?
They thought it was great. They thought it was the coolest thing ever.
Showing them how to steal.
And so I was just, "Oh yeah," and he's like, "Okay, well, we got to get out. I got to call dispatch, or I got to call my GSOC, and we got to sort this thing out." Well, to get into the building or to get into this data hall, you need biometrics, a PIN, and a badge. Well, we hadn't captured anyone's biometric. We already we had an intercept device on the biometric reader and the badge and the PIN. So I had the badge and the PIN, but I didn't have biometrics. And the reader that we had to leave out of, like the door he wanted to go out of, it was a man trap, which we all were able to fit into. But I didn't have anything on that reader, even if I did have some data captured.
Wow.
So like it was very deliberate where he was setting us up. So we're in this man trap, and he's like, so we get in to the man trap, and then to get out of the man trap, you have to do your thumb, badge, and then PIN. And I don't have a badge. I mean, I don't have a thumbprint that's going to work. And my badge that I did have at that time
only worked on the
was going to work on one of the side doors.
Yeah.
We were getting through the secure cages, so that's why we were able to be in that area.
Right.
And he was like, "Okay," he's like, "Badge out." and he's testing us, right? And
Smart guy. Should have hired that guy.
he was Johnny on the spot, pretty good. But for the buildings that were in that area, like it made sense, right? They had to be on the spot because of the keying material because they're hosting government material, keying material. And he was like, okay, badge out. And I had this brief moment of panic where I'm like, this project has to continue. What am I going to do? And I knew that these doors, you can push on the door and it would alarm, and it would alarm the entire building.
He would have to go.
And to override it, security has to, on the affected door, swipe their badge, type in their PIN, and do biometric. And but the door won't open if you push open on it. So like you can push the exit, but it's not going to open. And so that's what I did is I slammed that door, and the alarms are going off, and I'm just looking at that security guard, and I'll be like, hey, can you stop this? And then that's not what I'm saying, but I'm looking at him like that's what I'm telling him, like, fix this, right? I made a boo-boo. You fix this. And he looks at me like,
did you have your card out like you were pretending?
Like my badge?
Yeah, your badge.
Oh, I had my badge out. Yeah.
So he could have assumed you were about to
try it, but I just like tapped on the door.
Yeah, no,
right?
I like it. I like what you did.
And Royal was very impressed. He was like, that was a moment of genius.
Yes.
And it was only because I knew how the alarm systems work and we
were talking about, right?
And how they had it configured. Because again, we had this whole building dismantled, right? Like they never would have seen. I mean, we would have been on video. What is video good for? To watch the people that are stealing your stuff look at you in 4K, right? Or for this time, investigations, which they were doing.
After you do it.
Right. But they would have never known. Like there's many other buildings that we had worked with this company and we've gotten into and they never knew. And so he swipes in, gets out, and sure enough, he's like, okay, well, I need your badges. Our badges, absolute crap. Right? Absolute, like we didn't have a badge printer that we were using at that time. So I printed them out at like Kinko's or something like that. Well, I had a colored piece of paper that we then laminated with like packing tape because we had some things that weren't going as this project that we had some problems on this project already.
So you brought your pilot program.
Yeah. so I show him my badge and he can't read the number, right? And that's what he's trying to like base our stuff off of. And he was just like, okay, well, I'm going to have to keep these badges. I was like, you can't keep my badge. I have to get to work tomorrow. He's like, you can pick it up from security. I was like, you're not keeping my badge, sir. And I take my badge. And, he's kind of like,
well, you're playing the part.
Okay.
You got to take it all the way to the end.
Yeah. And so he lets me go. He asked for our names, checked ID and all that stuff. And, but then, that there's so many things that went wrong. The real part that went wrong after that is I knew they were going to be staking out that building.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, we're going to play it cool for like, a few days or a week. Mm-hmm. We'll be here. We have time on the project to do that. We don't have to make entry again. The point of contact for that building who was in control of all the crypto stuff for that company was like, I want to make entry with you in that building and I want to do it tonight. So this is the next night. And I was like, no, this is a bad idea. And I have a rule. I don't ever drink while I'm working or if I plan on working that night.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
And we weren't planning on working. So I had a glass of wine and I was just like, and I told him that I was like, hey, I already had a glass of wine. He's like, it's going to be fine. Or I want to see you get into this because I had a particular mechanism on those racks because he's like, do you know where these are? And I told him I did know where they were. I was like, it's going to be within this row because it was the only row we hadn't checked.
Right.
And he's like, okay, I want you to show me that you can get through this mechanism because he was convinced that we couldn't get through this mechanism. And I was like, no, this is a bad idea. And it was a bad idea. We get there. We're in this new secure cage, and there's people in this building. It's like 11 o'clock at night. There's no one that ever is in this building. There's some guys in the data hall. There's a girl in the lobby. There's a person in the cubicles. These are all security guards. And it's a trap to see if we get in there.
What were you wearing?
Regular clothes, what they would be wearing, jeans and a polo shirt, stuff like that. Just what their employees wore.
Okay.
We had some company branded lanyards, company branded backpack, all that stuff.
Okay.
And so yeah, I get into the secure cage. There's a guy on the other side of that cage, and he's like looking like he's working on something. I get in, and then we start getting past this mechanism, and he gets up and he leaves. And I was like, yep, we're gonna get caught. And sure enough, 30 seconds later or sooner, a security guard comes to the front of that gate, and she's like, hey, I need you all to come out here and talk to me. And I was like, okay, yeah, just 1 second. We're doing something. She's like, no, I need you to come out now. And I realized at that point, she can't come in here. She doesn't have authority to come into the space that we're in.
She can do your work.
And I asked the client, I was like, oh, she can't come in here, huh? And he's like, nope, they're not allowed. And I was like, okay, I'm going to show you how I get into this then. And he's freaking out, right? Because like, oh, he's like, you got to get that letter out. And I was like, put that away, because we gave him a letter, a get out of jail free card as well. And I was like, put that thing away.
Yeah,
and I was like,
that yet.
We're going to talk our way out of this. Let me get in. We're going to talk our way out of this. So they're like, okay, how did you get in? Right? And I had the master key. And I said, my boss gave me this key. And he said that I need to use it to be able to check into this stuff. And they're just like, okay, well, where's your ID badges? And this time we pulled out our real ID badges that weren't made out of printed paper from Kinko's. And they're like, okay. They're like, I need that key. And I was like, absolutely not.
No way.
My boss said that if I give this key to anyone, I'll be fired. Because it literally was the master key for all their East Coast operations, not just for that building, for every building on the East Coast. And this is a multi-billion-dollar corporation. They're like, well, we need that key. And I was like, no, absolutely not. And they're like, okay, well, we're going to need something. And I said, I have nothing to give you. Like, there's nothing here. And they're like, okay, well, let's write down your first and last name and then you can go. And we left. And funny enough, they actually were doing an investigation on everyone that was there. They called the director for the security team that we were working for. And they're like, oh, we found one of your employees. He's breaking into this like secure area. We need to fire him, blah, blah, blah. Like HR is on this call at like 2 o'clock in the morning. They're doing all this stuff. And this director's like, no, they're supposed to be doing that. I don't know why they got caught. I'll figure it out. We'll have a debrief tomorrow. But like, they're fine. You don't need to fire them, right? And so we had a debrief. And I told that point of contact that was there. He was the one that told us. And I told him, like, very explicitly, like, this is not going to end well for us. And he was fine that we got caught because, he was happy to see that they were on it.
The likelihood of you not getting caught was just as good as you getting caught.
Well, I mean, but the day after that we got, like, we set off the alarm and it was the day after. It was like the week. If it was a week later, it would have been fine.
You were compelled by you.
We were. And that's what I told him. But that's why it went awry, right? There's two things that went awry. We're in the man trap, and I didn't have a way out, and I had to think of a way to get our way out. And then we had that time where the security guard, I was able to complete what I needed to do, and then we walked and we talked our way out of it. Now, of course, they started an investigation and stuff like that, but I didn't have to hand over my get out of jail free card. I didn't have to hand over a master key or any of my badges, like my actual badges. So it worked out in the end. Like, the project was a great success. The team that had us do it, our point of contact, he was super ecstatic to have us work on the project.
Well, I'm listening as you're going along, and you hit everything. You hit everything. So, I mean, you could have been non-attributable if you were using aliases, obviously.
Yep. Or if we stolen, like, if we implanted fake employee information into the system.
Right. Ahead of time, I can see where.
Which we did that for a previous project with that same company beforehand.
Okay.
But we didn't do that this time.
That's okay. Probably. So all of your social engineering was spot on. No matter what you get yourself into, you cannot rely on our mechanics. You can't rely 100% on them. You have to accept the fact that something is going to happen. What am I going to do at the time? You not succumbing to the panic.
Right. Well, you
Right?
can't.
You can't.
You can't.
So if anybody's learning anything from our conversation today, it's you will have fear, you will have panic, but it's how you deal with that,
Mm-hmm.
right? And as you've pointed out, and it's pretty obvious from the things that I've learned, as good as you can be with your skill, you have to be that good. You have to practice.
Always.
You have to know constantly practicing.
You have other people relying on you. Even if you're on a commercial red team, if you are the person that is like known as their entry person, you have pen testers or you have other red teamers who are doing the digital stuff that rely on you. And though it may not be life or death, like you're there for a job and you're there for a reason. And if you are not performing to the level that you need to perform at, you are letting your team down.
You cannot rely on who people think you are.
Right. You have to be the guy.
You got to be that guy.
Yeah.
So
even though you
yeah,
don't want to be that guy, you have to be that guy, right?
That's right.
In that context, right? So, yeah. Well, Mr. Anderson, I really appreciate you coming on and spending all this time with us and sharing your story, sharing your knowledge, and being able to just talk about some of these things. Some of the stuff, peeling back the veil that a lot of the world doesn't get to see, right? The private sector world never gets to see.
Right.
And even on the public sector side, a lot of people don't know. They know that this stuff could happen, but they don't know what it actually looks like. And I really, really appreciate you just being able to come out, share your stories, share your wisdom, and talking about your experiences. And everything's going to be anonymized, but
that's okay.
Still having you out here is just an absolute great time.
Thank you. I feel the same way. I was thinking we could probably talk about the possibilities of what's coming in the future and future scenarios where our skill sets will be in demand. Not that we'll have to teach other people, but perhaps have to use them to help other people with what we see going on in the world. Maybe there's a conversation.
Yeah, we can definitely have that in the future for sure. I mean, that in itself could just be another few hours of conversation.
There's a lot of channels out there, very good channels that talk about prepping, that talk about EDC, that talk about homesteading and all these things. But I think there's a void when it comes to human intelligence, covert methods of entry, all of these things. I don't think housewives need to learn how to pick locks. That's
right.
not my point. But there's going to come a time where we really need to be aware of what we're giving away and intelligence.
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely.
Look forward to it. Thanks,
man.
my friend.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Red Team Radio. Don't forget to like this episode, hit subscribe, and follow for more. Craving extra Red Team Radio exclusives? Dive deeper at redteamradio.net and click support for early episode releases and members-only content. Join us twice a month as we continue to unveil the unseen in the Red Team Chronicles. Remain vigilant and do not cease to be curious.